Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. If you didn't sign in on the sheet out in the foyer, we'd like for you to do that when you leave. Since it is a public hearing meeting, we'd like to have record of those who have attended the meeting. So my name is Bill Purcell. I'm one of the Knox County Commissioners. Brenda Cassee is a commissioner. Barry Lester is commissioner. Rob Clendenny on the end here is our soil and conservation administrator. Cameron Keaton to my left with all the whiskers. He is our Knox County engineer, and then Jason Booth is our county administrator who works in our county offices. So the Knox County Commissioners welcome and encourage citizens to be involved in this public hearing to discuss the reevaluation and adjustment of the permanent assessment base for the North Branch of Ford Creek Drainage Project in Knox County on this Tuesday, December 16, 2025 at 6 p.m. at the Mount Vernon Memorial Theater. It is our intent to ensure that the public can be heard at this meeting, and our time parameters for tonight is from 6 o'clock to 7:30 if we need to. This public hearing is being recorded. It's not being live streamed, but it is being recorded. And tonight's hearing will address only the amount of money that can be accumulated in the maintenance fund, also known as the permanent assessment base cap, for the North Branch of Ford Creek Drainage Project. The maintenance fund cap is currently $4,680. This current cap has handicapped our annual required maintenance, as well as not allowing funds to be set aside for future repairs when and if necessary. And I've already introduced those on our stage. And after the hearing tonight, it is the intent of the Board of Commissioners to make a decision as to whether to adjust the cap on the permanent assessment base at our Tuesday, 10 a.m., December 23rd session. And our agenda for tonight, then, is to do an overview of the drainage project, the maintenance fund of the North Branch of Ford Creek histories, watershed measurements, and the maintenance fund cap. And we will conclude with the public comment period. So at the beginning, Rob and Cameron are going to be talking about the project. And after they are doing their overview, then we will invite you to come to the mic. And at that point, I'll give you the instructions as to how our public comment will go. So I'll turn it over to Rob and Cameron at this time. And once again, thank you for being here.
Sure, thanks. So I'm going to go through the agenda here pretty quickly because Bill threatened me tonight with defunding our program if I went on too long. He said we would take the money away from the soil and water budget and use that to maintain the ditch. So that might work out okay for all of you folks. You're all right for that? Okay, so yeah, as Bill mentioned, our agenda, just briefly, an overview of the Ohio Drainage Project petition process for single county drainage improvements, the Ohio Drainage Improvement Maintenance Fund, North Branch of Ford Creek Project and the project history, and then a little bit of comparison on watershed measurements between 1970 and 2025. We'll also, Cameron, I believe, will review just briefly how the permanent assessment fund base and the maintenance fund cap is calculated, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of why we're really here tonight, which is public comment and question and answer from you folks. So real quickly, the Ohio Revised Code section 6131 is single county drainage improvements. And what that does is it allows private landowners such as yourselves to petition the county commissioners to have drainage improvements constructed on private lands. Those petitions can be filed either by an individual or a group of landowners together. 6131 establishes the process for funding the construction of those projects. And then it also establishes a project by which the drainage improvement projects, which are constructed by private individuals, or through other ORC authorizations, which most commonly would be Section 940, and we'll get to that in a moment, can be added to the Drainage Improvement Maintenance Fund provisions in 6137. So 6137, which is really why we're here tonight, establishes that the Board of County Commissioners for each county shall establish and maintain a fund within each county for the repair, upkeep, and permanent maintenance of each improvement constructed after August 23rd of 1957, which is when this section of code was first majorly updated, under Chapter 940, 6131, 6133, or 6135 in the revised code. So those sections might not mean a lot to you. Chapter 940, that is powers of soil and water conservation district supervisors. Actually, that is how North Branch of Ford Creek started, as a petition to the soil and water conservation district supervisors for assistance, not initially a petition to the county commissioners. 6131 is single county improvements, so that's anything that happens within the geographic boundaries of Knox County. 6133 is multi-county improvements, so if we had a project that was proposed in Licking County, for example, and it spanned the border between Licking and Knox counties, then 6133 spells out how the two boards of county commissioners in Licking and Knox County would cooperate to move forward with that project. 6135 is similar, except that that's interstate projects. So if we were in Western Ohio and we had something that spanned the state border into Indiana, then that section of the revised code would govern how we were to handle that. It describes the process for establishment of the maintenance fund and its administration, and establishes that the assessment shall represent a percentage of the estimated benefits as estimated by the engineer and found adequate by the board or joint board of county commissioners. Except that at no time shall a maintenance fund have an unencumbered balance greater than 20% of the permanent assessment base for maintenance established under 6137. And we'll get back to that in just a minute. I would go back up to the top there to that first bullet point and point out a couple of things. 6137 is not permissive language for the county commissioners. Sometimes you'll see stuff in the revised code that is permissive language, and that simply just means that the county commissioners can do this. They may not have to. 6137 is not set up that way in terms of the maintenance assessments for these ditch projects. It says that the county commissioners shall do this. So, they don't really have a choice in this tonight. They have to maintain this fund, and they have to maintain an amount that is reasonable for upkeep of the projects. The other thing I think is important to note about this project and a couple of the others that we've got in Knox County that are similar is that these are landowner-driven projects. Originally, landowners in your area came to the Soil and Water Conservation District Board in 1968, said, we've got a drainage issue down here. We need to solve that. We put together, not our agency, not me at that time, I was 5. In 1970, they put together plans for that group of landowners. And then over the next 7-year period, that group of landowners and their neighbors hammered out how that was all going to happen. And then that construction project actually took place in 1977. Those landowners, with the help of some USDA funding, paid for the construction of the project out of their own pockets. And then they, as a group of landowners, went to the Board of County Commissioners at that time and said, we want to petition that to put it on the state maintenance program. And that is allowed under 6137. And the last bullet point there is that 6137 sets the limits on how and how often permanent assessment bases can be adjusted. Tonight is the how, and the how often is not more often than once every 6 years. So we could foreseeably you could come back every 6 years and go through this process, but that hasn't happened in this case. The first assessment was levied in 1977. It was not revised again, so we did not go through this process then until 1994. And then since 1994, we haven't changed it until we're going through the process again now. Just a little bit about the ditch. Starts on Kraus Road in Hilliard Township, was constructed in 1977. A little over 8,000 feet long. It drains 1,465 acres, and at the time that it was constructed, it was done primarily for agricultural drainage. Almost the entire 1,465 acres at that time was in agricultural land uses. And as we all know, that has changed considerably since that time. Although the ground on both sides of the ditch is still primarily agriculture, as we start to get into the headwaters, we see that there's been more rural residential development since that time. A little bit of just a nice video. You're probably watching this as you came in, but gives you kind of a good overview of the ditch and the area that is on maintenance. I'll let that scroll through for just a second there. If you're familiar with the area as we go down through there, that first ditch off to the left, that's not on maintenance, but we do maintain this portion that goes down here through between the trees. And then the maintenance fund ends, and we'll get clear down to the end here. But as we go down to the end of North Branch of Ford Creek, it intersects with Ford Creek, and Ford Creek is not on maintenance. And both of those watersheds then drain to the Licking River. If you got a notification in the mail and you noticed that your assessment fund acres had changed a little bit, I wanted to just real quickly go through the reasoning for that. The watershed on the left is what then county engineer, I believe it was Gary Durbin at that time, not 100% certain on that, but I believe it was Gary Durbin. This is the one on the left is the watershed that our office developed at that time and the watershed that Gary used to determine the assessments in 1977. If you're curious, after the meeting, I've got examples of what actually the USGS topographic map and the machine that we would have used to measure the watershed at that time. That was state of the art, I guess, in 1977. And you'll notice that watershed boundary on the left is kind of smooth around the edges. That's a result of the equipment that we had available to measure it with at the time. The watershed boundary on the right is what is being generated now with the latest in GIS data, and you'll notice that it's considerably more jagged as you go around the edge, and that's just because now we have the ability to more closely measure those little changes in the watershed as we go around those outside boundaries. So if you're one of those landowners that's on the perimeter and your acres went up slightly or down slightly, that's probably why, because we just have, the technology has improved. And, Gary was up, Gary White, one of the landowners there, was up here a little bit before the meeting. And if you notice clear down at the bottom end of that watershed, there's a little hook right there and a real dark splotch. Well, he was pointing out that those two, that's a couple little wetland areas there in ground that he farms, and he was pointing out that, that doesn't go into the North Branch watershed. But on our original map, we probably were including at least part of that in that North Branch watershed, but we're able to exclude that now. So with that, that's all I've got in terms of slides. I guess.
You want to keep the ditch?
Yeah, the loop running, I'll do that.
Camera
You good? Yep. So thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. And Rob did a lot of legwork on this with the GIS and stuff we have available. Like you said, we've got better aerials now. We've got better topo data. And we've got computer systems that can analyze this a little bit better than what we did back in the 70s. It's hard to believe that, so one of the big parts that we have to do is when I say we, I kind of mean me, as a county engineer, we have to establish what is this new base assessment going to be. And since this is kind of new and not something that we do on a regular basis, not anything I've ever done, we go back to the Ohio Revised Code and we figure out what it tells us, what's the directions that it gives us. And basically it says to take the original engineer's estimate, and thank goodness we had a copy of the original engineer's estimate from 1976, January 1976 is when this was put together. And it had 3 items to build 8,000 feet of ditch, which is simplified from what we had put together today. So it had an item for excavation, one for clearing, and one for seeding. So I used those exact same 3 items that they used back in 1976 and put today's cost to those items. And that's how we came up with a total of $57,192.07. In comparison, in 1976, that total was $15,157. So it's been 50 years and inflation's taken its place, so the cost of doing work. And to be honest with you, you couldn't really, and that's the 20% that you guys see on your sheets. The actual cost of construction is $285,960. So if you were to build that in today's dollars, it would cost you $285,000 as opposed to $15,000 50 years ago. So once we establish that, like I said, I think Rob touched on it, we take 20% of that. That's the max that the cap can be on the maintenance fund. And that puts us at $57,192.07. So that's how we came up with that. And then we took that number, that $57,192.07, and then the sheets that you were given, that's all based on how many acres you have draining into that watershed. So based on the total number of acres, we worked up a percentage, and your costs that you see on your sheets are all based off of a percentage of that $57,192.07. So that's how we came up with that. I don't know, Rob, if you want to talk about the sheets that they have in front of them that we handed out with the costs on it, or go over those numbers so that everybody understands what's there.
So keep in mind that what was mailed out to you was your property's proportionate share of the maintenance fund, I guess at any one time. That is not what your annual tax bill is going to reflect. That's just your property share of the maximum that we can have in that account. So for example, right now our maintenance fund cap is $4,600, give or take right now. So if you watch your tax bill or tax duplicates closely, you'll notice that some years you have the assessment on there for North Branch of Ford Creek, there's an amount. Other years, it's a blank line. Well, the reason for that is that, the assessment's been on there since 1977, of course, but we've been limited to how much we could have in that fund. Initially, with the original construction estimate that Gary Durbin had done or submitted, the maximum for that fund was $3,000. Then when we changed that in 1994, the county commissioners raised it then to a newer construction cost. I think they used, at the time, Jim Henry used something like $23,000 or $24,000. That resulted in that maintenance fund cap of $4,600. And of course, it's no surprise to you, construction costs for all kinds of things have just exploded since the mid to early 1990s, and so but the amount that you saw on there is not what you get on your tax duplicate. Okay, that's that amount. The county commissioners every May have to meet, and for the 4 projects that we have on maintenance in Knox County, then they decide what proportion of the maintenance fund is going to be billed on the tax duplicates each year. And so that's how that's taken care of. And I'm sure somebody will have questions on that later, we'll wait to see.
Yeah, so Cameron, could you give an idea as to what the maintenance cost is each year for that ditch and
Yeah.
what all is involved in the maintenance of the ditch?
Right, so they've stated a couple of times that the cap on this ditch right now is around $4,700. Last year, so we do two primary treatments to these ditches. We spray the ditches for woody vegetation. So we're trying to keep the trees and the larger vegetation from growing on these banks. They can, they can weaken the banks, and then plus when you're mowing the ditches, it makes it difficult to get in there and mow the ditches and maintain them properly with the bigger trees and that type of stuff growing around it. So mowing them and spraying for woody vegetation are the two primary things that we do in that ditch. We also look for erosion issues. Those are kind of small projects that we tackle when we have the funds available. But just to mow the ditches and to spray them once a year, it runs us roughly about $6,000 a year. And if the cap on this fund is $4,000, we're $2,000 short, and we can't mow the ditches and spray them properly. So this last year, I don't think that we mowed them, or we may have mowed them with some additional funds that we scratched together, but I know we didn't spray them. And you don't want to go too many years without spraying these ditches, and you get the bigger species of trees and that type of stuff growing up on them. It makes it more and more difficult to maintain. So it's really what instigated this entire meeting was the fact that Rob and I were getting to the point where every year we were just scratching together what pennies we could just to try and get them mowed and try to get them sprayed. And we're to the point now where we had some repair work, not on this particular ditch. It was one of the other ditches that we had. We were just going to go in there and dip it out. And the estimate we got from a contractor was $25,000 to dip it out and truck away those spoils out of that ditch. And with these small caps, there's no way that we could do that work without having those funds on hand. So there again, on this particular ditch, just to mow it and spray it one time is about $6,000.
Good, thank you. And a question may come up as to, we have 4 ditches.
Yeah, we got 4 projects on maintenance in Knox County. There's North Branch of Ford Creek, also Ralphie's Ditch. So if any of you are familiar with the west side of Centerburg there, Ralphie's Ditch or Compton's Ditch, Ralphie's Ditch is how it's on the record, is another project. We have Kokosing Plantation, which is a rural subdivision stormwater project on 586, and then Sycamore Meadows, which actually is part of the North Branch of Ford Creek watershed. This program, the 6131 program, is being used more and more by counties to maintain stormwater development projects in rural subdivisions, mostly because the process of maintaining those through homeowners associations just doesn't work out. So, the developer petitions the county to put that project on maintenance, and then those become a maintained project just the same as this ditch. The major difference there is that most rural ditch projects like Ralphie's Ditch and Ford Creek, the county engineers will base that assessment on the watershed, so everything that contributes water to the ditch. For rural subdivision programs, those are usually limited to just the lots or the parcels that are inside the subdivision. So both Kokosing Plantation and Sycamore Meadows are just the lots that are in that subdivision. And it is possible that you could have an assessment for multiple projects, okay? So the people who are in Sycamore Meadows subdivision down there, they get an assessment for their stormwater management, and then they also have an assessment for North Branch of Ford Creek. Now, for an individual home site, the assessment for North Branch of Ford Creek is not very much, but still they have 2.
Yeah. And the pot of money for each of these ditches, it's their own individual pots. The money doesn't flow from one pot to the other to be able to help out. Money doesn't flow out of the county general fund to maintain any of these. And so they're individual unit. And so we have to look at each of these as an individual case. And that's why we're here tonight to kind of share that. And if you don't have anything else, I'll turn it over to the people to be able to ask their questions, make their statements, and I'll give these procedures for addressing the board for tonight. If an individual is interested in addressing the Board of Commissioners, you are encouraged to provide the board with a written statement of your comments if you have that, or other appropriate supporting documentation. We will not ask everyone to swear in. However, we will assume that if you're coming to the microphone to speak, that you will be honest and truthful in your comments, instead of having each of you raise your hand and saying that. Speakers should begin their comments by stating their name, their address, and limit to your comments, if possible, to 3 minutes in length. And you must stop speaking promptly when we signal you. We know it's a hearing, so we want to make sure that it's a clarification thing, because if you have additional questions that you need to ask of Rob or Cameron or any of us, we welcome those comments. We expect you to be courteous and professional, and the president of the board, which is me at this point, may terminate public comments are offensive, profane, vulgar, defamatory, or disruptive. And public comment is designed to gain input from you, and not for providing immediate responses from the board, even though we will try to answer what we are able to do that. And our intent is to give as much information that we need. If there's follow-up questions and things that need to be done after the session, that's fine. And so again, I open the floor up to whoever wants to come and address questions or make statements. At this time, there's a mic on each side. So you'll just need to do that. And when I see people not standing and speaking, then we will go into we're done. So so thank you for being here tonight.
Okay, my name's Linda Schlegel. I live at 5400 Columbus Road, Centerburg, Ohio, 43011. And if I understand you correct, you want to go from about $4,700 in the cap to $57,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So that would be an increase of like 1,200% in our taxes?
No.
Well, that's what I need to know.
No.
What is the percentage you're looking for everybody involved in this?
Yeah, there's two steps in this process. Tonight's step is to establish a cap that allows us to be in that 20% area of what it would cost to redo the whole thing, if that would ever happen. The second, and so that's the first step. That's what we're about tonight, to say this is what the new cap is. That cap can only be established every 6 years. We're at that 6-year period. It hasn't been done for multiple years, and I think part of the reason for that is we didn't have all the inflation that was taking place that made things so costly to be able to do the ditch and spray the ditch. So that part of the cap is just basically saying that's 20% of the replacement of the whole thing. It doesn't mean your taxes are going to go to that, because
Well,
we
we need to know that.
Pardon me?
We need to know that.
That will be discussed in May, but I imagine that, that'll actually be discussed on the cap on the 23rd, the cap part. As to what the assessments will be, that will be something we'll be doing additional homework on, commissioner-wise, and with Rob and Cameron's guidance. But we are aware that we can't make it so that we price people out of their homes. But we also know that we have to be able to maintain the ditch. So, yeah.
What was your address and name again?
5400 Columbus Road,
We don't have it, Mike.
Centerburg, Ohio.
What was your last name again?
Schlegel, Schlaegel. I have some more questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this going on the ballot?
No. It's not about, according to my understanding of the Ohio Revised Code, it's not about, there will be a discussion. I would imagine what will happen when we do the May assessments, that we'll look at what is the minimum amount to be able to do the ditch. And Cameron mentioned 6,000, 7,000. And so that would be probably what we would aim for. There will be an increase, I would anticipate, because we have to be able to maintain the ditch and not go to the extreme of, if something catastrophic happens, that we have to go to that full amount.
Well, I just think we need a lot more facts than
So
what you're
Jason's
presenting here.
Jason's got your information right
So
here.
your current assessment is $7.13 a year that you pay.
Per 100,000?
No, just total.
Total.
In total per year, you pay $7.13 into this maintenance fund. So of
So-
the two proposed options, it would either go to $14.27 a year or $17.61 a year.
Okay.
So you're talking
That's
about
what
an
I want.
increase of about $10 a
Okay.
year.
I'm Jared Hinton. My wife and I are here at 5590 Columbus Road, Centerburg. So we're on the other side of Sycamore. So you're
Excuse me,
only
what did you see? You turned away when you talked. What's your last name?
Hinton.
Okay, thank you.
So the blue line is the only place that gets maintenance? Is that that's my
That's
question.
correct,
So
yes.
we're on the other side.
Right.
So that's just on us?
It's what, you're part of the watershed.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's anybody that drains to the watershed, where your water drains to this creek that's being maintained, is assessed.
Okay, but we can't get any help as far as assistance getting that fixed? That's
Oh, you
coming
certainly
through-
can. If you got issues with it, you can bring it to our attention at any
So
point in
just come to
time.
the commissioners and ask?
Either Commissioners or, the engineers or Soil and Water Conservation District, yeah.
So there's three of us. There's Dan Tiffany, JD Acres, and then Collins.
Okay.
That is all flooded because it floods out JD Acres, bottom ground. And then the state changed the tile.
So is that up by the Conservation League? Is that
Yeah,
where you're
so
up
we're,
in that
we're
area?
right next to the Conservation Club.
Right.
So the state brought a 10-inch tile across Wilcox's from the other side of the road, and it daylights onto our ground, which creates a 6 or 10 acre pond, right? So we had to put a 10-inch tile in just to carry their water to the ditch, but the ditch can't get through Collins because their pond and everything that they have, so our field turns into a 20-acre pond.
Right.
We're 3 to 5 days.
So there is a process, and Rob is probably more educated on this than I am, to actually extend or to add to this area. If there's another
Okay.
area that needs to be included, a new petition would be filed. Rob, you want to talk to that a little bit, or how that works?
Yeah, so the same section of the revised code lays out a process to extend ditches or like Cameron said, just basically add on. A landowner or group of landowners would come petition the county commissioners for the extension or the addition to the improvement. Excuse me. And they would go through the entire hearing process just as if it was new construction. And the one thing to keep in mind about 6131 and the Ohio Drainage Fund improvement projects, or the Ohio Drainage improvement projects, is that they're not a grant for construction of a project. They are a loan. So, for instance, if the landowners in Ford Creek had petitioned the county commissioners to build the Ford Creek project originally, and the commissioners had approved it, then the county would have built the project. But then, and the revised code specifies a certain number of years, but then the landowners that are assessed in the project repay the county for construction of the project. So it's kind of like and there's really no interest involved. It's basically a no-interest loan to build the project. But then that goes on to the maintenance. Anytime one of those is constructed, then that goes on to maintenance, and then the county takes care of maintenance on it for forever. So there is a process to do that, and we'd be happy to hook you up with that.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, Rob made a good point, is that this isn't a grant program, and it's not a free program through the county. It's basically, if an improvement's made, the cost of that improvement will go to the people that benefit from that, and it's typically the watershed that drains to that area, and they would pay for that improvement back over time at 0% interest. And then moving forward, that's what we're talking about today, the county would establish a maintenance fund to maintain that ditch moving forward once it's constructed. And it doesn't always have to be open ditches. People think petition ditches are open ditches, and that's what we're always dealing with. If you deal with Delaware County and some of these more urbanized counties, a lot of their stuff deals with piping. Ditches that are piped out, storm sewer through subdivisions are covered through petition ditches and those types of things. So.
I'll throw one small caveat in there. The process of getting all of the environmental approvals, you probably all know this, but the process of getting all of the environmental approvals today to do a ditch project is far more complicated than it was in 1977. Right. Ohio EPA, US EPA, Army Corps of Engineers regulations are far more difficult to deal with now than they were at that time. So we can run through the project. It just becomes, keep in mind that to do this project, it took them from 1968 to 1977 to get it done. And with today's environmental approval process and hoops that we have to jump through, it could probably be almost that long now.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Dan Gilman and my wife Becky, 5240 Gilbert Road. Okay, according to this map, all this property in the green is above us. We're down in a valley. Now, is that going to affect us?
I'm not sure which map you've got in your hand or which one you're looking at, but
He's got a copy of the map with the parcels on it. No, this one.
okay.
We don't have a slide for that.
I don't believe I do.
Yes, Dan something.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't tell if he said Gilman or Gilman.
Yeah, so the question he's asking is, he's on the north edge of the one, and I don't have a good map for this, I'm sorry, I apologize. He's on the north edge of the watershed, and you're on which road there?
Gilbert Road?
Gilbert Road, which is, you're looking at this map, Gilbert Road is the one that goes across right at the top of the page, has the little jog in it right there, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and so his property is, as you're looking at it, to the left of the jog.
Yes.
Correct? Okay. So his question is how does this affect him? Keep in mind that that the way that the project is set up, it is not an all or nothing for each of your properties. It is based proportionately on what goes into this watershed. So you may own 10 acres, 3/4 of an acre of it might run to this project, and that's the only part that's being assessed. The rest of it is unaffected.
Okay, then why would both of my neighbors on each side, their names are not on this?
Well, we looked at the parcel data and where that line intersects the parcel data. So if their parcels were outside of the line that you see up here on the screen right now, then they wouldn't have been included.
Well, why am I included?
Are you in this red line?
No. I'm outside.
Well, then you need to make sure that we get your name and address and make sure that we'll double check your information if you're saying you're outside.
I have no problem paying the tax, but I don't want to pay any more tax. I'm taxed. You know.
Right, and I understand that. But you should not, if you are outside of, anybody's outside this red line, you're looking at your property and you go, we're clearly outside of this and I got a letter for this. We just need to know that so that we can double check our information. But if any portion of your property touches this red line, then you're only going to get assessed for that portion. Like Rob said, if you have 10 acres or 100 acres and you only got 1 acre that drains to this, that's all you're being assessed on is that 1 acre that would drain to this. So if you're technically outside of this area, we can correct the maps and we'd make sure we get that corrected.
Thank you.
Sir, what was your last name? Whoops.
Gilman, Gillman.
And you say you're on Gilbert Road?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and 5250 was the
5240.
40? Okay. Because I didn't see, did you get one of these sheets in?
He did, he's on there for,
Is he?
and it indicates 5 acres drains to
Okay.
the south, but that may or may not be, we'll check that.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. We appreciate those. Others? Yes.
Hi, Jenna Hawkins. I'm at 4811 Venata Road. And you made reference to the Sycamore subdivision. So I know we're all in equally in percentages, but I feel like as we're developing, are we still putting all the new people in equally? And the reason I'm saying is that just like with the Sycamore Meadows, that actually increased drainage onto my property because you've taken up farmland and it's been developed, so it changes and increases drainage. So all that assessment is still the same as, I guess, no matter, I guess, the change in the layout, the change in the drainage. Mr. Hinton talked about the increased culvert size. Noticeable difference in my property flooding once those were finished, like immediately. So just kind of curious as to, and I know, sorry, I can't remember your name, that you were out and we discussed how
Right.
that flow goes. And,
Cameron, yep.
Thank you, Cameron, yes, and how the flow goes and all that. But guess my main question is, have you also then considered, is it going to increase with the new development that's going in on 314? How much of that will affect the drainage and add to the flow of the drainage that wasn't there before?
No, those are good questions. And depending on where, well, like Rob said earlier on, Sycamore Meadows, not only do they pay an assessment for Ford Creek, but they also pay an assessment for Sycamore Meadows. So they get twice that
Right.
they're paying into two different ones. Any of the new subdivisions, and I'm not sure when Sycamore Meadows was constructed with that development, but I can tell you with the subdivision regulations we have now, if there's any new developments that go in, the newest one in Hilliard Township that went in, it was the Table Rock subdivision that went back into there. I review that as a county engineer. I review the development and I look at what it is existing and what it is proposed, and any increase in runoff between those two developments, they have to hold that back in a detention basin or slow it down so it doesn't potentially put more water down the creek. Now, it will extend the amount of time that you might see water in the creek for a longer period of time, but it shouldn't increase the volume of water that you're seeing on your property. So any new developments that come into that area now are evaluated or looked at based on how much runoff there was before development and how much runoff there is going to be after development, and any increase in runoff has to be held on site and slowed down.
But Sycamore Meadows doesn't hold on to any runoff.
Yeah, I don't think there's any detention basins out there, and I'm not sure when that was constructed, if they were before the stormwater regs and that type of thing.
No, that probably wasn't prior to the stormwater regulations, but I don't
Yeah.
remember exactly now
Yeah.
what the date was.
And some people think, so just for an example, and I know there's a lot of probably farmers out there that may want to argue with me, but this is just the math, how it works out. If I take a row crop field and I turn it into a subdivision with maybe 2 or 5 acre lots, it actually puts less runoff off by calculations because of the row crops and the tilled fields will actually run off more water than a grassed area that's being mowed and maintained, if that makes sense. Even though you've got houses
Yeah,
and driveways and
it-
those types of
It makes
things.
sense, but I do know that, I think the culvert was increased that we talked about earlier because they were having drainage and runoff problems. So I see what you're saying, but I also see what actually
Yeah.
happened. so.
Was that the one on 657 there that you're talking about, the culvert that you're referencing?
Yes, we talked about it.
Yeah, that was the one that ODOT put in, so from a county standpoint, we didn't have any say in what they put in there
Right.
at that point in time, so.
All right, thanks.
But we do keep an eye on that. We try to make sure any new development, be it commercial or residential, does not create an adverse effect downstream for all the other owners down there.
And that, I mean, I'll answer a question that you didn't quite ask, but you probably want to know. And Bill alluded to this earlier, is that unfortunately, the Sycamore Meadows subdivision drainage assessment fund and the North Branch of Ford Creek assessment fund can only be used on those projects. Even though there may be, you might be 10 feet downstream from one of those projects, we can't, by statute, we just can't use that money to come down onto your property and help rectify a problem. Be nice if we could, but we can't. And it's kind of understandable. They don't want, these folks' tax assessments for drainage maintenance being used for something in some other part of the county. Makes perfect sense, but unfortunately, even if you're just immediately downstream of a project, there's no way that we can use those funds to help you out on something.
Okay, who's next?
I'll just reiterate real quick on those sheets, just like I think when we were talking to Lynn. When you look at that and you look across those numbers there, you can see, I remember, it's what you're currently being assessed.
Yeah, would be your,
Yeah.
it's this one here.
So you got your impacted acres, if you're looking at your sheets across the top there. You have your estimated current collection per year. So if they're collecting it, if you haven't hit the cap in the drainage area you're in, that's the amount that you would see on your tax bill, estimated. The current base should actually is what's the next column over there. So what we found out when we were doing our research into this is that really people were only being assessed about half of what they should have been assessed. And I think it was probably because we were hitting the cap so early that it really didn't benefit anybody a whole bunch. The next column you see there is the proposed assessment base. That's the total amount for the year. And then basically we'd be looking at 20% of that, correct?
Let me look at that.
That's 63 or?
The proposed assessment base would be if we reach the cap of $57,000, how much of your money that you've paid in over that period of time would be in that fund. So like that very first column, if we got to the $57,000 max in 10 years, 12 years, however long it took, that first homeowner, $639.57 of that $57,000 would have been what they paid in.
I guess we're actually on, that's homeowner number 44. We're on a
Oh, yeah,
different
we're on
page
page,
here.
yeah, 44, sorry, we're
Yeah,
back
if
to
you follow
page.
along, so.
So really, the proposed year, option 1 and option 2 are what we would be looking at in May to help us get to the cap. And I think if you look at proposed option 2 and you go to the very last page, if we went to that option, we would collect $5,719.20 per year, which obviously Cameron already mentioned, we need about $6,000 a year just to maintain the funds or maintain the maintenance. So we're kind of just breaking even at that point. But that's kind of how you walk those sheets.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of historical insight on why your assessments are the way they are. when we got to 1994 or so, well, the early 1990s, we had a situation where the ditch required a lot of maintenance. We had several large maintenance projects that we needed to do to take care of some erosion issues that we were having on the ditch. We needed to do some bank protection. Those were all kind of expensive things. We did not have money. At that time, our maintenance fund cap was $3,000 based on the original construction estimate. We did not have the money available to do that. It's discouraged in the revised code and kind of frowned upon, but at the time, it was important enough that the county commissioners said, okay, we will loan the ditch fund the money necessary to do that, but we've got to increase the assessment. So we went through the process in '94 of increasing the assessment. That got us up to the 4680. That amounts to about $3.19 an acre. So figure how many acres you've got in that ditch watershed. Your current assessment, if you were paying the full rate on the current assessment, would be about $3.19, $3.20 an acre. So the county actually collected that back for, I think it was 3 or 4 years until the loan, I guess you'll call it, that they had made to the ditch fund was repaid to the general fund. And then at that time, so that had been what, 97 or 98, they reduced the assessment to half. So what you've been paying since then is half your assessment, or $1.50 something an acre. So historically, that's kind of how those numbers all wash out. So right now, if you were paying full rate, $3.19 an acre, plus or minus a few tenths of a cent. But for the last quite a number of years, you've been paying half assessments.
And I think, Rob, is there 129 parcels? Is that what we've determined approximately?
132.
132. And so just to give you an idea, for this year that we're on, for all 132 parcels, the fund only collected $2,316. And so that's what we're looking at, is to increase the cap, but also how to do that is, if you look at that proposed option 2, it would bring in $5,700 and I'll get my glass on, $5,719 a year for all 32 parcels paying in per whatever their per acreage cost is. That's kind of what this sheet's kind of walking you through and trying to tell you.
And I'll apologize. I'll apologize for nothing I can do about it, but I'll apologize for the way the Ohio Revised Code is worded. It is confusing at best sometimes. I mean, we're talking about maintenance funds caps, we're talking about permanent assessment bases, and then what you're really worried about is what's my tax bill each year. And none of those things are exactly the same thing. And I'm sorry about that. Nothing that we can do about the terminologies that they use, but really what we're wanting to do right now primarily is increase the assessment fund cap so that we can accumulate more money in there over time. Now, and I don't want to throw the commissioners under the bus here, but
he will.
I mean, they could potentially say, hey, we've got to collect that all in 1 year. They're not going to do that, you know. That's not going to happen. My guess is and I don't want to speak for them, my guess is they'll be somewhere around whatever the full assessment's supposed to be right now. That won't get us money really quickly to do repairs, but it will allow us to accumulate more over time. So we can build up. So if we've got projects where we've got to do bank stabilization with rock or something like that, we can say, okay, 3 years down the road, we'll have enough money in the fund that we can do that. We'll put a Band-Aid on it here for a few years till we get to that point, and then we'll do that work.
And I think the other key is, Commissioner Purcell hit this, but this money that is collected is in the county treasury in a separate fund. the Ford Creek Ditch Fund, and it cannot be used for anything other than repairs or maintenance to the Ford Creek Ditch.
If you wanted to call the county auditor's office at any time and check to see, hey, how much money's in the maintenance fund for these 4 projects, they could tell you.
And I can tell you, I have the report right here. There's currently $4,418 in your fund that's been collected. $2,409.85 was received in calendar year 2025. So, we're bringing in only $2,400 in the fund. Since we didn't do any repairs or any work because we didn't have the money to do it, there's $4,418.78 in the fund as of today.
I think for me, when I first saw this form, it looked like the high amount was what it was jumping to, and I questioned that as well. But if I understand it properly, the cap of the $57,000 is as high as amount of money can ever be in that fund.
Correct.
That $57,000 could have been accumulated there over 8 years, 10 years, 15, however many years, but that is the most it could ever be, and that number, it represents the percentage that they've put in over that time. So it's not in the first initial look at it, it looked like an annual jump of that amount. It looked like, what in the world? This is like so high. But my understanding is we're going to spend $7,000, $10,000, or whatever it is to fix the ditches each year. And that cap that's in there, that money is what's used, and it's only used for this project. And that just represents a percentage of their donation or tax to that over that period of time. But it's not an annual, or it's not like the commissioners could jump or would jump at that number. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
So, yeah, that's,
Bill, I
And
think
it-
this
yeah.
gentleman had
yeah, I
a
was
comment.
going to
and we-
make sure that he,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Gary L. White, trust on that paper. I got a bunch going into it. Do we have to go to the full 57,000? Because we're going to look at this about every 6 years, right? We should be, instead of every 12 or 15. And we're going to build up, which I got that part answered. But do we have to go to the full? How long is this 57,000 going to be good for? Who knows what inflation's going to
Yeah,
do,
right,
right?
exactly. And like you said, we can only do this every 6 years. So this will be in place for whatever we determine at this point in time, the commissioners make this decision, will be in place for the next 6 years. It can't be revisited for another 6 years.
Right, but
Um,
in 6 years, that seems like a pretty large number for inflation for
Yeah.
what you're doing.
Yeah,
I don't think you mowed it this summer.
right, yeah.
You
And
got
we
the
didn't spray.
You got the tractor there, but it never moved.
Wow.
So, 'cause I run that road pretty regular. So, but that seems, yeah, that's too low. You can't do nothing that little bit of money in today's world.
Right.
But, so everyone has got a little lot and they're freaking out over taxes, so the numbers don't sound so big. That sounds big to me.
Yeah.
Do we have to go to that, say, that full 57,000 right now? I grant you it takes a while to build it up there.
Right.
But can we go to maybe a little smaller number where you guys can operate, which I think at, 35,000, 40,000, you ought to be able to operate, to get that thing, because there is some bars starting to come back in it, and there's some bank work that needs to be done,
Right.
so just, it's food for thought, I guess I'm putting out there.
No, I appreciate it. You're exactly right. It does, so to answer your question, your
But
original
that
question.
number, I mean, if I was a small landowner, I'm a large landowner, I got 150 some acres going into
Yeah.
that thing.
So just
That
for
about made me-
clarification, this base that we're setting has nothing to do with what the commissioners are going to put on the taxes. These are two totally different things. And like Rob said, This is a complicated matter. So what we're doing is we're setting a base right now.
Right, I understand the base, and
So
that's gonna-
they could-
that's gonna
They
fill
could
the-
move the base to $57,000 and nothing would change. We could leave all your assessments exactly the same, and you would pay the exact same amount. It would just take longer to get to that 57,000.
Yeah, but we can't wait long, because the ditch ain't gonna wait that much
Right,
longer.
right,
Because
right.
if you don't keep up with it, then you're gonna have to rebuild the whole thing.
So the thing that comes in, Gary, and you touched on it, is that we're starting to get some woody vegetation in there. There's a couple areas that need repair. Those things cost substantially more than just mowing the ditch and spraying the ditch. So that $6,000 I gave you, that's mowing it and that's spraying it once. Now, if we got to go in there and do bank repair, which we have done a few years ago, and then if we got to repair any tile and that type stuff, that goes up dramatically. Again, we had another ditch that we looked at that was just a fraction of the distance. So I don't know, what was that? Was that
600
1,000
feet we were doing.
600 feet of ditch of dipping it. It's $25,000.
No, Ralphie's ditch.
It was Ralphie's. That's correct.
Yeah, I'm on that one too.
Yep. Yeah. So the advantage of having a little higher cap, if we can get to that point, is it allows us to do these repair projects and some of these other projects.
Well, I
Not being
understand
limited
that, but,
Yeah.
you know, as a small person that's lived in the city and moved out, and you're talking big numbers, that's scary to death.
Yeah. If they own 100 acres, it'll cost them a lot. Yeah.
Well, I'm about 291 right there on that chunk.
Yeah. Well, we like you.
I know you do. How well I know. I'm just, the big number.
No,
Do we
I
have to
get
get, say, you know, will 30,000, 35,000 work for 6 years?
Yeah.
You know, to build up for 6 years, and then maybe revisit another 6 years. And then maybe by then, yeah, we will have to go to maybe beyond 57,000. Who knows where we're going?
Correct. Right.
Well, I would say in 6 years, if whoever of us are here doing this again, there will not be $57,000 in that fund anyway, because even under this proposed two, we would bring in $5,700 a year in tax assessments, and we need
That'd take 10
all of
years.
that. That'd take 10 years to get to 57,000.
That's if we didn't
That's if you
spend
didn't
anything.
spend anything, but we know we need to spend between 5 and 6 a year, so chances are, we're gonna be treading water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just thought,
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. It's a good point. Yeah.
you know, but it's, when you start talking tax, you know, when anyone sees taxes, they start freaking out.
Yeah. And like I said, the cap doesn't have anything to do with what people are going to see on their
I
tax
know
bill.
that, I know that. I mean, I hate to say it, but my dad and I helped start this ditch. We did it in my dad's living room.
Yeah.
So, been around for a day or two.
Thank you. And as I mentioned earlier, when we were talking about, there's the cap, and then there's what the assessments that we will determine in May, that we will be very conscious of you as a taxpayer, that we know we're not, you definitely can be assured that we're not going to go to 57,000 in 1 year. But we do know that we know what the maintenance costs are just to maintain it. And if we don't do just the maintenance minimum, you never put any money in there for the future to be able to do any additional work on the ditch. So we will be, the cap is one thing, and that's the only thing for tonight. Even if we set it at 20,000, you know, we know that it's higher than the 4,680, but your assessments, if let's say we did say 20,000, I'm not saying that's what it is, example-wise, we would, even if we had it, our assessments were 2,000 above what our annual maintenance was, even at 20,000, you're still going to take maybe 10 years to even get to that as a cap, because you're going to be using that. So, yes.
Hi, Jenna Hawkins back again, because Gary helped me think of a question. So on that note, we're not contributing enough for normal maintenance. So tonight's vote is about raising the cap. So then I'm assuming in May is when the decision comes of option one, option two, what percentage are we going to try to increase? Which then goes back on the fact that we're behind already. The ditch is already going to take more than the 6,000 1 year of maintenance. Like obviously you've seen, I'm 45 acres, so not as much as Gary, but enough that it kind of hurts a little. I can't clear out my own watershed because I was told I'm not supposed to, like, I can't do that thing. I can't have things cleared out of it.
Could be.
Yeah, I can't go down, if I break the bank down, if it's the Army Corps of Engineers. Am I, Cameron, yes or no? Like, I can't go in there and start doing things, right? So I get that,
Yeah.
but my point is, what we're all concerned about is the tax increase. There's going to be an increase, and we need to have it. And option one and option two, neither one sounds like it will meet the needs of the ditch. So when's the real meeting about the money and what we need to do and what it will cost us? So tonight, we're deciding cap. Seems pretty blatant, we need a higher cap. So when do we actually talk about the money and what we really need to get the maintenance up to snuff and how much that will increase our bill? If we're not even collecting on the assessments now, then people are going to be surprised because it needs to be done in order for it to not need 57,000 work because, things have eroded.
Well, we have to establish that in May.
So it'll be
So the
May,
discussion will take place in April,
in April.
yes.
Okay. And will we be notified the same way? There'll be letters, we'll have advance, like, I do
did
feel
we
like we
mail
had
out?
great amount of time.
Typically, the mailings will just go out with the new assessments that the commissioners have set. I think that's why we try to give you those options.
So
to
we're
at least
not
see.
involved in the assessments that are set?
Correct.
And
That
what-
typically is not, there's not a hearing for that, it's just
That's
an
okay,
annual-
I'm just asking.
Yeah, there's normally
But
just,
what
all
will
the
that
ditches are done.
assessment, though, what all will be taken into consideration? Only those three things listed in the beginning, though, things from the original easement, is that correct?
As far as what the estimate was based on,
As far as what the estimate's based on and what can be repaired, like,
yeah, if we're.
yes, like what will you use to set the first assessment? Will it be the immediate needs for repairs or prevention? Or will it be saying, we just want to mow and spray?
Yeah.
That's my question. Are we
I
gonna?
don't think you can get it all back. I think it was
Right.
Gary's point, this will probably be relooked
No, no,
at
I
in
know you
6 years
can't get
again.
all of that,
And I
but
think
I'm
that's why probably, I think at a maximum, the commissioners would probably consider option one or option two. And that's, option two is 10% of the cap, so it would take 10 years, obviously.
So
to
if we
reach
take
that cap.
option two, will you have enough money to do standard maintenance even 2 years in a row?
Probably
Yes.
not.
Probably not.
Well,
Still gonna
Probably
be
not,
short.
yes,
We think we'll be
no.
close because your fund has $4,000.
Who's doing the math?
Your fund has $4,400.
Right.
If you take the carryover,
So if you set it at option two and you bring in $5,700, you're over, you're close to $10,000.
So
There's enough to
that's-
get maintenance. But then you're going to collect that each year so you can start to maintain it. And that comes into a Rob question that he would identify whether it needs sprayed every year. You mow it every year, but do you spray it every other year and then you
Right.
let the fund build a
But
little
we
bit?
already know we have issues now above spraying and mowing. I guess that's my question. So are we looking, are option one and option two going to be reevaluated in 3 years for option three? Because we're sounding like we're not going to have the funds to do what's required
So
for 10 years,
So
which
let-
means
Just
more.
a point of clarification, Jenna. What we're doing tonight can only be done once every 6 years. That's the cap. There again, we're dealing, that's one pot we're dealing with. The other pot is what goes on your taxes each year. And that gets reevaluated every year. Okay, so that's not once every 6 years. So what they put on your taxes every year in May, the commissioners will talk to Rob or myself and say what are the maintenance needs and that type of stuff, and where do we need to have the cap to have enough money to do what we need to do to those ditches.
That's actually directly related to my question because your math concerning those repairs is where that figure comes from. So I'm asking so that we could have as much notice as we can.
Sure.
So like we already know we're not going to have enough to go for 2 years. So would you be able to do a plan that said, okay, this is option one and option two right now, but in 4 years, we're probably going to have an option through because we already know that our math isn't adding up and we're not going to have enough money to maintain it the way it needs to be because we're already behind. I
Right.
guess that's really my question, and how do we find out and have that advance notice so that I can say, hey, I know in 3 years, because of the size of my property, I'm going to need an extra, 200, 300, 400 in tax for that. I mean, whatever the figure is.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my question, is that planning, when we know we're behind, if you're doing the math, how soon are we able to have that information for our planning, for the whole thing? I guess that's.
You've got it in your fingertips right now. It's given to you. That last number in option 2.
That's it?
That's what, if they put that into place this year, for this year in May, that would be your number. That's what you would pay for a year, okay? So we've done our best to try and estimate, just to try and get us to $6,000 a year. That's not looking at bigger projects and repair. So on a year-by-year basis, because one thing that none of us know is what's inflation gonna do? What's the cost of chemicals? What are they gonna go to? Diesel fuel, man hours. So that's why that's reevaluated on an annual basis and set down with. Now, I understand what you're saying is you want to be notified, when are we doing this and all that type of stuff. So, and I don't know the whole process, but I know that process of establishing those annual fees is not something that requires a public hearing or a public meeting. They do it in their normal scheduled meetings as commissioners, and the agendas go out for that. But you won't be receiving letters on a case-by-case basis and that type of thing. So it's certainly something that can be put out on the website or whatever else ahead of time, commissioner's webpage and that type of stuff that they could.
But you as
let
an
know.
engineer would come to the commissioners and make a case for this has to be done, and then the commissioners decide, and they have to vote to raise any of the taxes,
Yeah.
assessments.
Rob and I can look at what's the maintenance that's needed on these ditches over the next year, what needs to take place, and what we think that's going to cost, and then they can make a decision on how we're going to raise those funds to pay for that work that's going to be done. So.
On your sign-in sheet, if you didn't, I don't think it was asked, but if you leave your email, we could at least put you in an email packet so that when we're getting around to that, those that are here tonight, we could see that you get notified.
And I think to answer your question is, yes, that's only kind of treading water.
Yep.
But we were
Right.
trying to be
It's kinda
sensitive
like-
to the fact of not raising the property tax assessment any more than was absolutely necessary to kind of cover what is immediately needed, and try to put a little bit of funds away for your ditch. But to get to your point, like if you wanted to go all the way there, yeah, but the tax assessment would have to go up a lot, and I don't think anybody has an appetite for that. So we're trying to just do as little as possible to be able to maintain it on an annual basis right now, and at least be able to mow it and spray it.
All right, thank you.
And I can tell you, and if there's anybody in the audience that knows anybody that has a long reach arm mower that would be willing to work with us, we pay them obviously to do that work. But that's the struggles that we have is we've had a guy that did it for a while, and he backed off, and so a year or so ago, we used county forces out there and mowed them with our tractors. Now, our reach arm mowers don't go far enough down the ditches, and on one ditch, we only got access on one side, so we can't reach the far side. But it was important enough for us to try and get the tractors out there and at least get it knocked down and try and stay on top of it. We really don't want these things to go into disrepair because they benefit you folks. I mean, you're the ones who petitioned, maybe not you directly, but the folks before you. Gary was probably part of the original application, but we put these in to help with the drainage in the areas that you live in and to give you a place to outlet your field tiles and those types of things. And the commissioners are just tasked with maintaining those ditches. And that's really what we're trying to do here is we've kind of reached the point where we're not even raising enough money. Like Jason said, we brought in $2,000 last year, and it costs us $6,000 a year just to try and do the minimum maintenance on it. And to your point, another thing that can come up is, let's say we have a huge monsoon of a spring, and we have erosion issues out there. We got fields washing out. We got tiles damaged. And if Rob and I look at those things and we put a project together and we say, listen, this is going to cost about $30,000 to fix this. well, we got to look at the fund, what's the balance in the fund, how can we get this work done, and is that something that we want to pass that cost along to you folks to make all those repairs in 1 year? That's why we try to raise that cap, to have, if you will, a rainy day fund. So when those hard rains come and we need fixes for this, if we can build that cap up, we have money that will absorb those spikes, when we hit those every now and then, which are bound to come. Right now, we've got a tremendous amount of ash trees and stuff down. We can't even get access to it to mow it at this point in time. We got a bunch of trees that need to be cleared out down through there as well, so.
I would point out one thing. There is nothing in the world that stops any of you who are here tonight from calling the commissioner's office or writing them a short note saying, on North Branch of Ford Creek drainage project, I would prefer that you keep the annual assessment to X dollars per acre. I mean, you can do that, and that gives them, information to know where you're at between now and next May, So it's, there's always that opportunity for public input there, even though we don't have some sort of formal hearing process going on.
Any other person want to speak before we call it quits for the night? Well, we do appreciate you coming, your input. As I mentioned, on December 23rd at our 10 o'clock meeting, that's when we will do a further discussion as to what that cap should be. And, we've heard all that. Cameron has given us the number as to what the max it could be. Doesn't mean we need to be there, but that's the max it can be. So once again, thank you for being here tonight, and we will be adjourned. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Be safe going home.